it was so sought after and so hard to get that Eisenhower and Gerald Ford packed it aboard Air Force One and flew it to the White House. Obviously not to the White House,
Sure.
but to Washington, D.C., and they would have it served every single Thursday in the White House.
Really?
Yep, and it was so sought after that somebody would take a refrigerated truck from Denver to Charlotte, North Carolina, and he would sell it in restaurants and country clubs for $1 a can. You could buy a 6-pack for $1.50.
What?
What's up, beautiful people, and welcome back to the Social Drinkers Podcast. Mitch, what'd you bring to drink today?
What is up, everyone? Beautiful people. We bring that theme back a lot. I like it. I brought a take on a margarita. I paused because it's kind of a margarita, but I don't really like traditional margaritas. So it's sort of a tequila-based cocktail with fresh squeezed fruit juice. I guess it is a real margarita. So that's what I brought.
Kate, what about you?
I brought the same thing, but I figured I would talk about the glasses that we're using since Mitch and I always have the same drink. The weather's nice, it's warm outside, so if you guys have listened to any previous episodes, you know that I am a very seasonal drinker, but something that's not seasonal are the glasses that we have. They are these like hatched glasses, and they are like old-fashioned glasses, but they work really well when you're making homemade cocktails. If you want to use like one of those big square ice cubes, they're like the perfect size. They're nice and thick. They're super nice. They're just from Crate and Barrel. They're literally nothing special, but I'll have them linked in the description because we use these all the time, and I just feel like they look really cool and chic.
Yeah, nothing makes me, when we first got these, they're not that expensive. I think they might be $4 a glass or something like that. They're not, like you said, they're nothing crazy, but they make me feel so rich when I open up our cabinet.
I know, it's like a silly thing, but it's true.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Ray, what about you? What are you sipping this week?
Well, Mitch, today I've brought the best beer that has ever been made, and I actually have a little bit to say about it as well. But that would be Coors Banquet, everybody.
The
and
best.
I got the stubbies too because they taste better than those.
And
But
it's cooler. It's cooler.
It is cooler.
Yeah.
So, little fun facts about Coors Banquet that a lot of people might not know.
Okay.
Everybody should know this because everybody should have cracked open a Coors Banquet, but inside your cap, almost always, it'll say golden since 1873. Also says it on the bottle. So 1873 is when Coors Banquet was founded, but it wasn't originally called Coors Banquet. It was actually just called Coors. And it was nicknamed Banquet Beer by canyon miners in a place called Clear Creek. And they would drink it in banquet halls or big banquet tents if they didn't have access to a hall. And that name didn't become official until 1937 during the Great Depression because Coors was looking for new ways to sell more beer.
So Coors Banquet, as we know it today, was the original Coors beer?
According to sources.
Yes. Interesting. Well, that's cool.
So on top of that, it was only sold in 11 states.
Okay.
In the West. It was unpasteurized and it had to be cold.
Well, that's Coors' thing, the coldest water.
Yep. And then so also there's a legend about Coors Banquet, Mitch. It was so sought after and so hard to get that Eisenhower and Gerald Ford packed it aboard Air Force One and flew it to the White House. Obviously not to the White House.
Sure.
But to Washington, D.C., and they would have it served every single Thursday in the White House.
Really?
Yep, and it was so sought after that somebody would take a refrigerated truck from Denver to Charlotte, North Carolina, and he would sell it in restaurants and country clubs for $1 a can. You could buy a 6-pack for $1.50.
What?
Oh my gosh.
That's ridiculous. So you're telling me that
insane.
presidents when were they the presidents? The 50s? Is that I don't know.
I don't know my
Whatever.
presidents, man.
How about the mid 1900s? Presidents were just getting lit on Coors Banquet on Thursday nights. That's pretty cool.
Damn right, the best way to do it.
We're gonna call that legend true on the Social Drinkers podcast, I say.
I agree.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good folklore, folktale. What do you say?
Yeah, folklore, alcohol folklore, we'll call it.
There we go.
Well,
Folklores with social drinkers.
speaking of Coors, I did some digging. So in Cleveland, there's so many craft breweries, and I think a lot of cities have that, where craft breweries are kind of the thing. You think of cities like Asheville, North Carolina, you think of cities like Denver, Colorado, and there's a craft brewery down every single street corner, right? Cleveland has a lot of them as well. There's a pretty rich craft brewing scene here. And so I did some digging into the craft beer boom, because the craft beer boom is not as old as people might think. So if you go back even to the early 2000s, people weren't drinking craft beer routinely. It wasn't a thing to wake up Saturday morning and at 11 o'clock go have brunch and then sit at the craft brewery and play cornhole all day with your dog and your kids playing in the gravel. That wasn't a thing. But now that's routine across tons of American cities. And the changes to that industry have been pretty interesting. And the reason I bring it up is because you started this podcast off with Coors. And I think what people don't realize is that beer in the early 1900s up until really the 90s, beer was dominated by 3 breweries. So it was dominated by Coors, it was dominated by Pabst, and it was dominated by Anheuser-Busch. And those 3 breweries drove the majority of beer sales. I think it was some number, don't quote me on this, but it was over maybe 78% or something like that of the market was held by those 3 breweries, which is pretty crazy. And I'll walk through the evolution of the craft brewing scene and how it kind of exploded. But did you guys know that up until literally the 90s, 3 breweries dominated the entire market?
I had no idea.
No, yeah, no, I didn't know that, but it is like something in my mind that I've thought about, because as adults, we go to breweries with our friends and their friends bring their kids, and then we don't bring our dog, but people do bring their dogs if they have good dogs. And I was thinking, like, that is not a memory that I have when I was younger. And it's because these places didn't exist.
No, it's a brand new thing. And it's really interesting. So the first craft brewery, the first technical craft brewery, was Anchor Brewing. And you probably have heard of Anchor Brewing. It's pretty popular. Now it's a pretty big brewery. But it was actually founded by a guy named Fritz Maytag, and he's of the same Maytag family that makes your washer and dryer and appliances, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah.
I was about to ask that.
Yeah, so he didn't feel like going into the family business of washers and dryers and figured beer would be more fun, and actually launched Anchor Brewing in 1965, which that's
awesome.
Technically the first craft brewery. Up until that point, people were experimenting with different beer flavors and they were kind of playing with homebrewing. But until 1978, homebrewing was illegal. So from the end of Prohibition until 1978, homebrewing was illegal, which I thought was also very interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That is really interesting. So who changed that?
So that was Jimmy Carter in 1978. But the making homebrewing legal wasn't enough of a change to really drive expansion in the craft brewing market, because the problem was breweries of all shapes and sizes faced franchise and excise taxes that were massive and would put small breweries out of business. They couldn't afford to operate a brewery. But in 1983, that tax was lowered for craft breweries, and it led to people being able to actually start profitable businesses that were good for the local economy and everything like that. And so in 1983 is when the craft brewing scene started to, I won't say started to gain its legs, because as with anything, it takes time. So it was sort of made possible in 1983. And then over time, people started to experiment. They're doing home brewing because it's legal now. They're trying new beer flavors and creating all these unique types of beer. And in the 90s, it really started to take off just because it became a movement. And so as it went through the 90s, you had your larger craft breweries starting to take off. And in the early 2000s, that movement kind of exploded and has kept going. And I think it's still kind of exploding. I mean, if you go to any city, there's just craft breweries everywhere. And that it was something I was wondering about in the history of it, because like you said, it wasn't a memory that I had either going to a brewery, but you're right, it's because it didn't really exist. And it probably only existed in our childhood in cities where craft brewing was taking off, like Asheville, like Denver, those types of cities where it's a part of the culture.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I didn't have my first like craft brewery experience, and like my parents don't drink craft beer. Your mom does, but your mom is like, she's more adventurous, I'd say, for her age group. Like she's always kind of been on the cutting edge of things. And like our parents' age doesn't really drink craft beer. I feel like that's like not really a thing, but it really, at least like in Ohio where we're from, and now Ohio has like a ton of different breweries. But it's just interesting because you don't really realize it until you start thinking about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
It's crazy. I was gonna comment on how many breweries there are. I was driving around today for work, and they're putting up a new brewery in geez, it's not far from your guys' house.
Oh, right
Probably
down
20 minutes.
20 minutes. They're doing a brewery in Broadview Heights. It's only probably 5 minutes from our house, which is pretty crazy.
I mean, it's nuts.
Yep.
I mean, you see them go up every day. There's 4 of them in Kent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
wild.
I mean, it's also wild when you think about, I know we haven't been there, but San Diego craft brewing is a massive, massive piece of the
Huge.
culture. When you're in Denver, you think there's a lot of breweries here. It is. I've traveled to Denver for work a lot, and you just go down the street and there's just brewery, 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 brewery. It's insane how many there are, and how many massively popular breweries there are from Denver, from Asheville, these cities like that. And so as many as there are in Ohio, when you go to a city where it's fabric of who they are, it's just crazy.
Well, Mitch, that Rocky Mountain water just tastes the best. So
I mean, hey, there's something to be said for it, because New Belgium is quite the brewery as well. So
arguably one of the best.
agreed. But Kate, you're right. Before we wrap on this one, I think it's funny because, Ray, I don't know what you think, but yeah, our parents' age group, they drink Bud Light, they drink Miller Light, they drink Coors Light, they drink Stella Artois. They don't drink craft beer that much,
Mhm.
at least from what I observe.
I would say that for us, me and you, we grew up with a pretty well diversified fridge.
I agree. Yeah,
Mom and dad definitely liked trying new beers.
agreed. Mom, dad travel a lot, and they're foodies and go to a lot of different places and experiment a lot. But for the most part, I think our parents' age group is, I think they're pretty safe on that stuff, but I don't think it's by choice. I think it wasn't a part of their life, because I mean, heck, 1983 is when it started to take off. Kate, your dad was already almost an adult. I mean, it
Mhm.
wasn't, not only not a part of his childhood, it wasn't even a part of his when he started to drink. So
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. You start thinking about it like that. But that was my rabbit hole of the week. I had to go into the evolution of craft brewing, and I found it extremely interesting because, as always, politics, money, all kinds of things like that play a part in how these things evolve over time.
And before we move on, let's do a little bit of what's your favorite craft brewery. So, Mitch, what's your favorite craft brewery that you've ever been to so far?
Putting me on the spot, but I think my overall favorite craft brewery, and it's not only because of the beer, is Little Fish Brewing in Athens, Ohio. And it's because most of their beer is gluten reduced, so you and I can drink beer together. It's the only place that we can go and sit down and have beer and sit at a brewery, and you can actually participate in the beer. And so for me, it's a really special place, and the beer is amazing. I mean, they have one of my favorite beers. If you guys are in Ohio, or if you're ever going to be in Athens, Ohio, Little Fish has a beer called Wood Thrush. It is one of the best beers that I've ever had. It's a phenomenal one. So I would say that's probably my favorite craft brewery, but there are many good ones.
Ray, how about you? Have you ever been to a craft brewery?
I have been to a couple, but I haven't been to enough to say that I have a favorite.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
the
you're
new
still a little.
the newly 21 years old.
Yep.
Yeah, still a little young for that.
Unfortunately.
I would say my favorite is Little Fish as well, because I can actually drink the beer, and that isn't the case. Although I do have a coworker who his mom is gluten-free and he is from San Diego, and he said I should go to San Diego because there's a lot of options for me there. So I do want to make a trip to San Diego to try some of these breweries that have gluten-free options. But I will give a shout out to Saucy Brew Works in Cleveland. I feel like we've talked about them before, but they have locations at like a lot of different places. So Cleveland, Sandusky, Columbus. I think they're opening one in Nashville. And they not only have really good beer, but they have really, really good food, which I feel like is key when you're finding a craft brewery. Is to find one that has super good food so that you, if you're not drinking, don't want to drink, can't drink the beer, you have good food to eat.
Yeah, Saucy is one of my favorites. I like it a lot. If you're traveling, I mean, some of my favorites around, I'm thinking in Nashville, there's a brewery called Jackalope Brewing. That is one of my favorites in Nashville. I don't know. I'd have to sit down and really think about it because I've been to a lot of them, but I haven't kept that running list well enough, other than Little Fish is just, it holds a place in my heart because we can drink beer there together. We went to college there. I've been there so many times. And so that one for me is definitely my favorite overall, but there are a lot of good ones out there. But I think we've harped on the craft beer enough. What else did you guys bring this week?
So I saw this product on TikTok that I thought was really, really cool. So I figured I would share with the podcast. So it's a wine holder, but it also holds wine glasses. So when you are either bringing your wine bottle and glasses over to another room, if you're going to bring it to a friend, I think that this is a really good gift idea. So I'm going to try and explain it really well. But if you like need more of a visual, I will link it in the description as I always do. But think it's a round circle. The middle of it has a hole for your top of your wine bottle to go in, and you can carry it. So you hold it from the top. And then the sides have little cutouts, and then you just hang your glasses. So there's one that has, I think, 6 glasses, and then there's one that has 2 on either side. And so I thought this was like, and it's also a small women-owned, Black-owned business, which I thought was really cool too. They're just a little TikTok went viral, and I was like, I feel like I have to shout this business out. It's called Black Pearl and Black Pearl Designs. And they have a little other cute stuff like home decor type items, but I just had never seen something like this before. And I feel like it's a really good gift if you have a friend who loves to drink wine, or if you just want to get it for yourself to have around the house when you entertain your guests.
It's like a portable bar cart. I like it.
Yeah, it was super, super cool.
Yeah, I like
That is
that a
very
lot.
cool.
Ray, you should get that for college. And then when you go to parties, you should bring college type drinks in the wine holder. So instead of wine, you should bring Four Locos with glasses or something hanging from it.
Heck, I'm not a big Four Loco guy, you know.
I mean, yeah, that's disgusting. I would hope that you weren't.
I would
Four
hope that
Loco's
you
more of a high school thing. I shouldn't say that, but I just did.
weren't.
Wow. By the way,
Wow.
but all the college stuff and I don't know, just talking to Ray reminded me. Ray, we were watching and we talked about shoeies way back. I think maybe in episode 1.
Yeah.
And we were watching Breakpoint on Netflix, and one of the guys was doing a shoey.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
It
And
was like a
That is
shoey.
great.
he was, of course, from Australia.
Damn right he was, right? They only do shoeies down under.
Shoeies down under. That's so funny.
So we've all heard of NASCAR,
Nope.
I would hope. And years ago, there was a driver named Dale Earnhardt Jr., son of Dale Earnhardt, and he drove the number 8 Budweiser car. It was a Chevy, right? And part of that was he got Budweiser delivered to his home by truck.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's not the crazy part of the story, all right? The crazy part of the story is somebody at the distributor called Budweiser and asked if he was selling beer because he was going through more cases of beer than any other local distributor in the entire state of North Carolina. So
Oh,
it was insane. They were delivering every day, and he was going through between 100 and 150 cases every single day.
He must
oh my god.
he must have been throwing ragers.
Yeah, so that was the big thing, was that he wasn't doing it alone, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd be dead.
Yeah. So he was throwing huge parties and giving away lots of beer. So many parties that he had a fabricator on his NASCAR team that he asked the team manager to fire because he thought he was weird and he didn't want to drink with him, and he thought that if he wasn't drinking with him, he didn't want him working on his race car.
Oh my gosh. Who knew? Dale
That is
Earnhardt
really
Jr.
funny.
Who knew he was an alcoholic?
Yeah. Wild partier, man.
Wow, that is crazy. 100 to 150 cases a day,
In a single night.
dude.
I
that
feel like
is-
if it weren't for his name and the prowess that he has and his family has, like, you would have to be like, we need to renegotiate our contract because this is costing us like way too much money.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, they're called contract riders, and I remember in music, contract riders are pretty big, where you'll get a contract to go play at a festival or at an arena or whatever. And I'm talking about larger artists. And part of their agreement will be this rider where basically they ask for whatever else they want on top of the money they're getting paid. And I remember reading, it was going around Nashville, Kid Rock's rider was hilarious. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like he wanted every single show, he wanted 50 bottles of Jack Daniels and 50 cases of Budweiser and all kinds of stuff like that, where he would just have these particular things that he wanted backstage, and they were egregious amounts of alcohol. And then he had some funny ones too, where I think he wanted like some special white towels that he wanted to dry off with after something, and they had to provide these. But dude, these riders are hilarious. I mean, you think what, you just get free Budweiser for life and you can just get 100 cases a day? That's insane when you think about it. So wild stuff.
I just
That
can't
is
believe
so
that they
wild.
were delivering more beer to his house than to any other distributor in the entire state of North Carolina.
That blows
Yeah,
me
can
away.
you imagine like what his back stock looked like at his house?
Crazy.
He probably had like a 200 by 400 foot barn just full of beer.
He probably
had to.
did. Yeah, he had forklifts and he had pallets of beer.
Be awesome, dude.
Yeah, that would be pretty sick. Let me go get the beer for the party. Drives your forklift out to the barn.
I mean, dude, one of the stipulations was that you can't sell it, but there was no stipulation on how much you were allowed to have. So
Hey, well, there you go. Take it.
I want
Take
all of it.
all you can get. All you can get.
All you can get. Oh my. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
That is crazy. That's really funny. So the other thing that I brought to the table today for the podcast is another thing that I actually saw on TikTok, and it's called an infinity bottle. Mitch, I know. Oh, you're like making a face that you don't know what this is. I was just gonna
No,
say, I think I know what this is. I think you know what this is, but I was gonna ask Ray if he can guess what it is.
now I remember what it is now. It sounded familiar. That's why I made that face, but now I remember it.
I have no idea. Is it a cup
Okay.
that connects to a keg with a tube and it's just always full?
Close.
No, but that would be nice.
What
So
I need.
an infinity bottle is not that, but it is really fun. It is this bottle. You can just buy a glass bottle off of wherever you want to buy it from, Amazon. And it is meant to be, so a lot of people use this for bourbon, but I was actually reading the comments of this video, and a lot of people have also used it for like reposado tequila, to really any type of liquor that would mix well. And every time you buy a bottle of new, we're just going to use bourbon as example, new bourbon, you add a shot or two to your infinity bottle, and then all of a sudden you mix it all up and you have this new concoction of bourbons. And so it's called an infinity bottle because you pull it out, it's like a conversation piece. You can talk about the different bourbons. There's actually an app where you can log all of the bourbons that you've added to your infinity bottle. And then it's like a bottle of bourbon that no one else has in the entire world because it's your specific collection. And you can take it out when you have people over and sip on it, and it's a conversation piece. But then it's called infinity because you never stop replenishing it. So every single time you open, unless you just like chug the whole entire thing, the whole purpose is like this is supposed to be for special occasions, and it's like your own little craft bourbon bottle. But you take it out when you have like friends over or whatever, and then you keep adding to it, and so it never goes away.
What if I only drink bullet bourbon? And then it's just a bottle of bullet bourbon.
It's
Well,
just
then
a
maybe
separate
this
bottle.
That's
maybe
the
this
only
idea
flaw I
isn't for
see in this
you.
design.
The flaw that I see in the design is you'd have most people, I'd say, 80-90% of the people are doing this correctly, and they're buying nice bottles of bourbon and mixing up good stuff. They might have some Basil Haydens in there, and they might have some Maker's 46 in there, and they might have some Blantons in there, and they've got this really nice mixture of great bourbon. But that there's 10 to 20% of people out there that get this really cool infinity bottle, and they're putting in the $17 Jim Beam bourbon, the $14 Evan Williams, and mixing it all together. And so you have this infinity bottle of trash.
Mitch,
No.
I think that that's a lot more than 10 to 20% of people.
You think so?
I do.
That's really sad. That's really sad.
I think if you're doing an infinity bottle, you have to have a love for the alcohol that you're making the infinity bottle out of.
I agree. But there are people out there that love bourbon, and they're all, or tequila or whatever, and they're drinking those cheap, crappy ones. And then can you just imagine, like, take a sip of my infinity bottle, and you're like, it's disgusting.
Another problem
No.
I see is that I would venture to guess that a night with the brothers could empty my infinity bottle.
Yeah.
And it would no longer be infinite.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's for sure. I mean, when Jackson came over and stayed when we lived in downtown Cleveland, we drank almost a handle of Basil Hayden's. It was insane. We drank so much Basil Hayden's.
big bottle of expensive bourbon, and we woke up the next morning and I was like, this is literally gone.
Yeah, that was bad.
And imagine if all 4 of us were there.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been gone.
We would have needed 2.
I mean, Mac would only need a shot or 2, and then he'd be good.
Oh, burn.
But yeah, sorry, Mac, I'm roasting you, and you're not here to defend yourself. But anyway, Mac's our other brother. If you don't know, we've never introduced him on the podcast, but dude, we should have him on for a guest episode one time. That would be pretty fun.
We got to be careful. A drink or two, and he might be. Woo.
Yeah, that's true. And he's a teacher too, so he could get fired.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't even think he knows that we have this podcast.
Yeah, I don't think he does. But speaking of homemade stuff, I also was looking at infusions. Have you guys ever looked into what it takes to infuse liquors?
Would this just be like, I've done like pineapple tequila, where like essentially you literally just put pineapple in there for like a day.
And you've made it?
I mean, it tasted like pineapple. And then we would eat the pineapple that was in there, and that was really good.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly what you do. So, and that's how you do it. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. I think people go to a restaurant or whatever, and they see watermelon infused vodka in this cocktail, and they think it's this really crazy fancy thing. Well, you can do that at home. Just like Ray's talking about, the best way to do it is have something airtight. So the thing that works the best is a mason jar with one of those airtight seals on the top. You can infuse with anything, and it's just like you said. You put in your infusion piece, whether that be a fruit, whether that be spices, whether it be whatever you want, and you just leave it in there for a certain period of time. One of the things that you want to think about as you're infusing is, depending on the strength of the flavor that you're infusing with, that's going to determine how long you want to leave it. So a pineapple, berries, stuff like that is a little bit lighter, less harsh in flavor, you could leave it in longer. You could leave it in for 3 to 5 days. If you're infusing with something like cayenne pepper or ghost pepper or something harsh and spicy or something like that,
we need to do that.
We could do, I mean, you can do, I've had ghost pepper beer
like
before.
Ghost pepper tequila.
Yeah, I just never knew, I never knew that that's how these things were infused. It's really simple to do. And so I just wanted to bring that up as kind of a last point on the podcast, because I've been thinking about it as we have this nice weather. Oh, you know, when we're in Folly Beach, or even when we're just home on a really nice weekend, watermelon infused sounds pretty good. I'm not going to lie. That keeps coming back into my head after I said it. People think it's a really fancy, hard thing to do, or that they can't find it. You can do it at home. So I just wanted to give everyone that friendly little tip before we roll out of here tonight, because the weather is getting nice. You should infuse yourself some liquor and create a unique little cocktail at home.
I mean, when we did it, we didn't know that it was called infusing. So we were just like, let's soak some pineapples in tequila and see how it is.
Yeah. Well,
and then I'll tell you what, really good pineapples. I mean, like, it was like taking a shot of tequila with the pineapple in your mouth. Like, you'd bite into it and it's great.
Yeah, that flavor,
top-notch experience.
That flavor combo sounds amazing. Not gonna lie.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yep.
And then the tequila was good. So
yeah. Well, that's all I have. I don't know. I mean, we could just sit here and keep talking, but that's all I brought for this week. It's a little bit shorter of an episode.
That's all I brought too.
Cool.
Hey, do you have anything else?
No, that was it.
Wow.
Cool. Fun. I feel like we touched on what?
Did you change your hair?
Did I change my hair?
Yeah.
No.
Looks darker.
Oh, no, it's just getting darker because I stopped dyeing it.
So you did change your hair.
I haven't dyed it in a year and a half, if that's changing it.
Kate, did you change your hair? You look awful.
Everyone, come see how good I look.
Wait, Ray, remember? I see you've aged poorly.
Dude, one of my favorite quotes of all time.
Oh my gosh, man. All right, before we get into too many inside jokes, take us out of here. Tell everybody where they can find us and how they can listen to our stuff. Ray just finished his Banquet.
Yes, Coors Banquet. That's the French version, if you're curious.
Do you want me to take us out?
Go for it, Kate.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening to another episode of the Social Drinkers podcast. We really appreciate that you're here and that you've stuck with us through the whole episode. If you would like to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which is basically a newsletter form of the podcast, you get it straight to your inbox every Thursday, get you a new recipe, get you some historical facts, drunk history with social drinkers, some like fun industry news. It's super fun. We love writing it every week. It's really funny. So highly suggest, if you like the podcast, to subscribe to that. We'll have that linked below. And then you can also follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook at We Are Social Drinkers, which will also be linked below. And then don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you enjoyed the episode and want us to continue doing it. It means a lot, and we appreciate every single one of you.
Yeah, that we do. That we do.
Indeed.
Indeed.
All right. Indeed. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hold on. It would be a sin to cheers you guys without a open beer.
Oh, that's true. Well, let me cheers you with an empty margarita.
Yeah.
All
Make
right.
me sick.
Peace, people.
Cheers.
Peace.